The world is full of 5-minute experts with megaphone opinions and tweet-sized knowledge. Have you ever noticed how the loudest people in discussions are almost always the ones who know the least about the subject? Like that coworker who never studied economics but can solve all the country's problems in 5 minutes. Today you're going to discover the answer to this question that bothers anyone who likes to think. And more importantly, you'll understand why you, who actually study and reflect, sometimes stay silent while others speak with such conviction. Get ready to learn about one of the most fascinating phenomena of the human mind, an effect that explains everything from workplace discussions to political debates on social media. There's a psychological phenomenon that changed the way I see the world. It's called the Dunning-Kruger Effect, and it explains something you've probably already noticed. People with little knowledge in a particular area tend to drastically overestimate their abilities. It's as if ignorance creates a bubble of artificial confidence. But here comes the first surprise. This doesn't happen out of malice or arrogance. In fact, these people genuinely believe they know. The phenomenon was discovered by 2 psychologists at Cornell University, David Dunning and Justin Kruger. After studying hundreds of cases, they realized there's an almost perfect inverse correlation between real competence and displayed confidence. Imagine a driver who just got their license. They can barely park properly, but they're certain they drive better than everyone else on the road. They're not lying. They genuinely believe it. Or think about that cousin who took a 40-hour online programming course and now considers himself a senior developer. He's not pretending. To him, those 40 hours really did transform him into an expert. When we know little about something, we can't perceive how much we don't know. It's like trying to see in the dark. You don't see the obstacles right in front of you. Ignorance works like a blindfold over your eyes. And the thicker that blindfold, the more the person believes they see everything with perfect clarity. Think about this practically. If you don't know there are 10 layers of complexity in a subject, how are you going to realize you only know the first one? If you don't know the exceptions, how are you going to question the rules? If you haven't seen the extreme cases, how are you going to understand that your limited experience might not apply to every situation? But wait, there's something even more shocking about this story. This arrogance of ignorance isn't just irritating, it's strategic. For many people, certainty functions as a deep emotional refuge. Living in doubt is uncomfortable. Recognizing that the world is complex generates existential anxiety. So, unconsciously, many choose false clarity as a form of psychological protection. It's easier to believe there's a simple answer to everything than to accept the messiness of reality. Absolute certainty works like an emotional blanket. It warms, protects, and gives a sense of security even though it's a complete illusion. Some people prefer to live in a comfortable lie than an uncomfortable truth. I knew a guy who was like this. In any conversation, he had an instant solution for any problem. Economic crisis, just cut public spending. International conflict, just sit down and talk. Relationship problem, just have more dialogue. Depression, just think positive. For him, all the world's complexities could be solved with self-help phrases. And you know what his secret was? He never doubted himself, never. He lived on a tiny island of certainties and believed it was the entire world. He couldn't imagine that there were entire continents of knowledge beyond what his eyes could reach. He was like an ant looking at a garden and believing it knew the entire universe. The psychology behind this is fascinating. When we have limited knowledge about something, we also have limited capacity to recognize our own limitation. It's a vicious circle. The less we know, the less we can perceive how much we don't know. And the less we perceive our ignorance, the more confident we become. And here we arrive at the most fascinating paradox of all. The more you actually know about something, the more you realize how much you still need to learn. It's like climbing a mountain. The higher you go, the more you can see the size of the landscape around you. From the ground, you see only a few yards. From the top, you see infinite horizons and realize how limited your previous perspective was. Truly intelligent and educated people carry a weight that the ignorant will never know. The awareness of their own limitation. They know there are layers of complexity they haven't explored yet. They know their opinions might be wrong. They know there's always more to discover, more to question, more to learn. Remember the philosopher Socrates. He was considered the wisest man in Athens precisely for saying, "I know that I know nothing." This phrase wasn't false modesty. It was the expression of a mind that could see the vastness of human knowledge and recognize its own small place in that infinite universe of possibilities. But there's a crucial difference between Socratic humility and the paralysis of doubt. Socrates didn't stop seeking knowledge because he knew he was limited. On the contrary, it was precisely this awareness that motivated him to continue learning, questioning, investigating. True wisdom isn't knowing everything, but knowing there's always more to learn. Now get ready for a revelation that will change how you see conversations around you. The noise almost always comes from those who have the least to say. Have you noticed how the smartest people you know usually speak slowly? How they choose their words carefully? How they pause to think before responding? It's not insecurity, it's awareness. They know that words have weight, that ideas have consequences, that speaking without thinking can cause more harm than good. They understand that a poorly founded opinion can influence other people, that incorrect information can spread, that a generalization can perpetuate prejudices. On the other side, we have the festival of instant opinions, people who have a ready answer for any question, an immediate solution for any problem, a definitive analysis for any situation. They speak fast, loud, and with total conviction. There's no hesitation, no doubt, no room for maybe, it depends, or I need to think about this more. This difference becomes even clearer when we analyze the language each group uses. True experts speak with nuances. Usually, in most cases, this can vary, depending on there are important exceptions. False experts speak in absolutes. Always, never, everyone, nobody, definitely, obviously. But here comes something that will shock you. Our society unfortunately rewards noise more than wisdom. We value those who speak with firmness, not necessarily those who are right. We admire the speed of responses, not the depth of thought. We interpret hesitation as weakness and arrogance as competence. Think about the political leaders who are most successful. They're rarely the most thoughtful or humble ones. They're usually the ones who promise simple solutions to complex problems, who speak with absolute certainty about the future, who never admit doubts or limitations. I'll end corruption. I'll solve unemployment. I'll bring world peace. And this works because people prefer comfortable answers to uncomfortable truths. The same dynamic happens in the corporate world. In meetings, whoever speaks with more confidence, even without data to support their claims, usually gets more support than those who present careful analyses full of buts and howevers. The executive who says this strategy will increase sales by 200% impresses more than the one who says we need to test these hypotheses and see how the market responds. And now comes the part that will make you indignant. This phenomenon has intensified dramatically with social media. Today, anyone can become an instant authority on any subject. Just create a profile, post some opinions with an air of authority, and wait for followers to arrive. The internet has turned everyone into an expert on something. I know someone who became a relationship coach after ending 3 relationships in the same year. Her logic was, I learned from my mistakes, now I can teach others. Another who considers herself an investment expert because she made money on a cryptocurrency bet, which was actually pure luck, but she interpreted it as financial genius. And the most impressive, a guy who became a digital marketing consultant after making a story that went viral by accident. He didn't even know why the content had worked, but he started selling courses teaching the secrets of viralization. In a few months, he had thousands of followers paying to learn from him. The problem isn't these people trying to teach. The problem is them genuinely believing they became experts overnight. They confuse a single result with systematic competence. They confuse luck with skill. They confuse limited personal experience with universal knowledge. This culture of performance has created a generation obsessed with appearing right all the time. Having doubts became synonymous with weakness. Admitting ignorance became social humiliation. Changing your opinion became betrayal of your own principles. Saying I don't know became a confession of incompetence. We live in an era where everyone is forced to have an opinion about everything, from international politics to cake recipes, passing through complex scientific questions and deep moral dilemmas. It doesn't matter if you've studied the subject for years or if you heard about it for the first time 5 minutes ago. What matters is having a firm position and defending it tooth and nail. This social pressure is especially strong on social media. When some important event happens, everyone needs to take a position immediately. There's no time for reflection, for seeking information, for understanding the context. It's instant opinion, or you fall behind. And the more categorical and emotional the opinion, the more engagement it generates. But wait, let me show you something even more disturbing. For many people, admitting they don't know something is like admitting they're not competent, intelligent, or valuable. Ignorance becomes a threat to their very identity. They build their self-esteem on top of the illusion that they're experts in multiple areas. The human ego is fragile and needs constant protection. One of the most effective ways to protect it is to create the illusion that we're experts in everything, that our opinion always matters, that we have something relevant to contribute to any conversation. This illusion is comfortable, but it's also a prison that prevents real growth. When a person believes they already know everything about something, they stop learning. Why would they strive to acquire new knowledge if they already master the subject? Why would they question their beliefs if they're obviously correct? Why would they listen to other viewpoints if theirs is clearly superior? It's like trying to fill a cup that's already full. The water simply overflows and nothing stays. Similarly, a mind that considers itself complete can't absorb new information. It simply slides off the surface without penetrating. Intellectual arrogance functions like a shield that repels knowledge. I've seen this happen countless times. People who could learn a lot if they simply admitted they don't know everything, but they prefer to pretend they already mastered the subject rather than go through the humiliation of recognizing limitations. They prefer to maintain the illusion of competence rather than face the reality of learning. But here comes a liberating truth. True learning requires humility. It requires recognizing that there's always something new to discover. It requires accepting that our opinions might be wrong, that our beliefs might be limited, that our perspective might be just one among many possible ones, and this isn't easy. It requires the courage to admit ignorance in a world that punishes those who don't know. The courage to ask questions when everyone around seems to have the answers. The courage to say, "I don't know," when it would be easier to make up any opinion. The courage to change your mind when new evidence appears. This courage is revolutionary. In a society obsessed with certainties, intellectual humility becomes an act of silent rebellion. While everyone competes to see who has the strongest opinion, you cultivate the wisdom of doubt. While everyone performs knowledge, you practice intellectual honesty. But there's an aspect of this story that few people notice. Intellectual humility isn't just morally superior. It's strategically more effective. People who admit their limitations learn faster, make fewer mistakes, make better decisions. They have access to information that the arrogant will never receive. Now, I'll reveal something that completely changed my way of seeing discussions. Our society has developed an allergy to complexity. We want simple answers to complicated questions. Two-line explanations for phenomena that took centuries to be understood. Instant solutions to problems that have no easy solution. This infantilization of intelligence is dangerous. It creates a generation of adults who think like children. They divide the world into good and bad, right and wrong, black and white, who can't deal with nuances, paradoxes, or ambiguities, who panic when confronted with uncertainty. The idiot is essentially a child in an adult's body, someone who never developed the capacity to deal with the complexity of the real world, who still needs definitive answers to feel safe, who interprets any nuance as indecision, any caveat as weakness. Small children ask questions like, "Why are there bad people in the world?" They want a simple answer that explains everything. Emotionally mature adults understand that this question doesn't have a simple answer, that it involves psychological, social, historical, economic factors, that different cultures have different definitions of what evil is. But many adults never develop this intellectual maturity. They continue wanting simple answers to complex questions, and when someone tries to explain the real complexity, they accuse them of overcomplicating, of beating around the bush, of not knowing how to explain properly. When different people are confronted with the same complex problem, their reactions are completely opposite. The idiot immediately offers a simple solution. Crime increased? Just toughen the laws. The economy is bad. Just cut taxes. There's conflict in the Middle East. Just make a peace agreement. The thinker, on the other hand, asks questions. What kind of crime increased? In which regions? What are the possible causes? What solutions have been tried? What were the results? What side effects do we need to consider? He seeks information, considers possibilities, weighs consequences. To someone watching from the outside, it might seem like the idiot is more decisive, more practical, more efficient. He has the answer on the tip of his tongue. There's no hesitation, no complication. It's straight to the point. Meanwhile, the thinker seems hesitant, complicated, slow. He keeps asking questions instead of giving answers, but this impression is completely misleading. The thinker's hesitation doesn't come from insecurity. It comes from the awareness that he's dealing with something complex that deserves careful attention. He knows that hasty solutions usually create more problems than they solve. It's like the difference between an experienced doctor and a first-year student. The student might give a quick diagnosis based on the first symptom he observes. Headache. It's a migraine. Take this medicine. The experienced doctor will investigate. When did it start? What kind of pain? Have you had this before? Are you taking any medication? How's your sleep and stress? To an anxious patient, it might seem like the student is more efficient. He gave a quick answer and an immediate solution. The experienced doctor is complicating a simple problem. But who would you prefer to take care of your health? This depth of thinking comes with an emotional price that few understand. Those who see the complexity of things carry a weight that others don't know. They live with more doubts, more uncertainties, more internal questioning. And in a society that values the appearance of security, this is interpreted as weakness. Imagine carrying the weight of knowing that every important decision has dozens of variables to consider, that every problem has multiple interconnected causes, that every solution can generate unforeseen consequences. It's like being the only adult in a room full of children who want simple answers to everything. That's why many times the smartest people stay silent while idiots dominate the conversation. They know their careful answers full of nuances won't compete with simple shouted opinions. They know their hesitation will be interpreted as ignorance, while arrogance will be seen as knowledge. This dynamic creates a vicious social cycle. The more idiots speak loudly, the more thinkers stay quiet. The more space ignorance occupies, the less room is left for wisdom. The result is a society where the shrillest voices drown out the most intelligent ones, where noise overcomes signal. But now I'll tell you about the most fascinating aspect of this whole story. There's a type of person who confuses self-esteem with intellectual arrogance, who believes that being valued means always having an opinion, an answer, a solution, who interprets any admission of ignorance as an attack on their own identity. These people live in a constant search for external validation through performative knowledge. They need others to recognize their intelligence, their competence, their importance. And the fastest way to achieve this is by speaking with authority about any subject, even if they know nothing about it. I knew someone like this at work. She had a strong opinion about absolutely everything: marketing, sales, human resources, technology, finance, logistics, even about the ideal temperature for the air conditioning. And the most impressive thing, she always spoke as if she were the greatest authority on the subject, even when she clearly didn't understand anything. In meetings, she dominated discussions. She spoke loudly, used technical jargon, cited studies that no one could verify. People were impressed by so much expertise, as but those who worked directly with her knew the truth. Behind all that performance, there was very little real knowledge. It's a strategy that works in the short term, but is unsustainable in the long term. You can impress equally ignorant people. You might even open some professional or social doors based on this illusion of competence. But sooner or later, reality demands its price, and the real incompetence becomes evident. Now get ready for a shocking revelation about our digital era. It's never been easier to appear intelligent. It's never been simpler to build a reputation as an expert without having real knowledge. Just copy some information from dubious sources, mix it with personal opinions, and present everything with an air of authority. The audience, usually as ignorant as the expert, can't distinguish real knowledge from performance. They don't have tools to evaluate the quality of information. They don't know reliable sources. They don't know how to ask the right questions. So, they accept everything that's presented with confidence. This proliferation of false experts has created a generation of self-taught people without filters. People who watch some YouTube videos and consider themselves authorities on the subject. Who read newspaper headlines and think they understand complex issues. Who take weekend online courses and present themselves as consultants. A true self-taught person, and there are many excellent ones, knows they're just beginning to scratch the surface of a subject. They're aware of their limitations. They seek reliable sources. They verify information. They test in practice. They admit when they don't know something. They continue studying constantly. A false expert, on the other hand, believes they already master everything after a quick Google search. They confuse information with knowledge. They confuse theory with experience. They confuse opinion with expertise. And worst of all, they can't distinguish between reliable and dubious sources. And this confusion intensifies because we live in a culture that values confidence more than competence. Direct language full of certainties impresses more than careful explanations full of nuances. Simplicity is confused with clarity. Assertiveness is confused with authority. Here's a simple test that will open your eyes. Think about how you talk about subjects you really know versus subjects you know little about. When you truly master something, you use terms like usually. In most cases, this can vary depending on there are some important exceptions. When you know little about something, you unconsciously use words like always, never, everyone, nobody, definitely, obviously. This difference in language reveals a lot about anyone's real level of knowledge. But here's the cruel paradox. The less precise language sounds more convincing to those listening. Common people confuse assertiveness with authority, simplicity with clarity, arrogance with competence. They're more impressed by someone who says always do X than by someone who says it depends on the context. A real expert will say this issue is complex and depends on several factors we need to consider. In some situations, approach A might work better, but in others, it might be more appropriate to use approach B. We also need to take into account variables C, D, and E. A false expert will say the answer is obvious. Always do X. I've tested this dozens of times, and it works 100%. Anyone who says otherwise doesn't understand anything about the subject. Guess which of the two answers impresses the general public more? The second one, of course. It's simpler, more direct, more confident, even though it's less precise and potentially incorrect in many contexts. The result is that we live in a society where the most ignorant have more voice than the wisest, where arrogance is rewarded and humility is punished, where admitting doubts is seen as weakness and pretending knowledge is seen as strength, where people prefer comfortable certainties to complex truths. In social relationships, this creates embarrassing and frustrating situations that every thinker has experienced. The person who truly understands a subject stays silent, while someone completely misinformed gives lectures on the topic. The real expert can't compete with the enthusiasm of the ignorant amateur. It's like watching someone explain completely wrong how something works that you know deeply. You know the person is talking nonsense, but you also know that correcting them will create conflict. It will be interpreted as arrogance. It will create social embarrassment. So you stay quiet, watching misinformation spread, feeling powerless in the face of the arrogance of ignorance. This situation is especially common in family contexts. That uncle who never studied economics but decides to explain how the world financial system works during Sunday lunch. That cousin who read a dubious article on Facebook and now considers herself a health expert, giving medical advice to everyone. The brother-in-law who watched a Netflix documentary and became a history expert, correcting retired teachers about events they studied their entire lives. The mother-in-law who took a self-help course and now thinks she's a psychologist, diagnosing mental disorders in anyone who shows an emotion. Confronting these people is almost always useless and counterproductive. They're not interested in learning. They're interested in being right. They don't want information. They want confirmation of their own beliefs. They don't seek knowledge. They seek validation of their own intelligence. When you try to correct or compliment their information, they react as if it were a personal attack. You're trying to put me down. You think you're better than me. You're being arrogant. They interpret any disagreement as a threat to their own ego. And here we arrive at the most fascinating paradox of human behavior. People who really know about a subject rarely feel the need to prove it to others. They don't get into heated debates to defend viewpoints. They don't make a point of correcting every incorrect piece of information they hear. This happens for several deep reasons. First, true wisdom understands that reality is complex and multifaceted, that there's rarely a single definitive answer to important questions, that different perspectives can coexist and even complement each other. Second, the wise person doesn't need to convince anyone because they're not seeking external validation. They know what they know, and that's enough for them. They don't feel the need to constantly prove their intelligence because their self-esteem doesn't depend on others' recognition. Third, truly intelligent people understand that changing someone's opinion rarely happens through direct confrontation. They know that forcing information into the head of someone who doesn't want to receive it is a waste of time and energy. They prefer to plant seeds of doubt and let the person reach their own conclusions. This more subtle and patient approach is much less spectacular than the inflamed debates we see around. It doesn't generate likes on social media, doesn't impress audiences, doesn't earn applause, but it's infinitely more effective for promoting real changes in mentality in the long term. Meanwhile, the idiot is always at intellectual war. They need to win every discussion, refute every contrary argument, impose their worldview at any cost. They live in a constant battle to prove they're right, that they know more, that they're more intelligent. Their self-esteem depends on these small daily victories. This difference in approach reveals something deep about the nature of knowledge and wisdom. Real knowledge doesn't need to shout to be heard. True wisdom doesn't need to impose itself by force. Genuine intelligence prefers to influence subtly, rather than control brutally. That's why in a noisy and superficial society, the wisest often go unnoticed. They don't put on the show the public expects. They don't offer the simple answers people want to hear. They don't perform the confidence that impresses the naive. They're like deep waters that run in silence. But now, I'll reveal the most important secret of all. Maybe this is exactly what we need to learn. To value intelligent doubt more than stupid certainty. To give more credit to those who admit limitations than to those who pretend to know everything. To recognize that I do not know can be a much more intelligent answer than an opinion made up on the spot. In times of abundant information and superficial knowledge, cultivating doubt becomes an act of resistance. Resistance against social pressure to have an opinion about everything. Resistance against the culture of instant response. Resistance against the illusion that complex problems have simple solutions. Intelligent doubt isn't mental paralysis or pathological indecision. It's intellectual prudence. It's the wisdom of recognizing that some questions deserve more reflection than we have time to give. That some answers require more knowledge than we possess at the moment. That some opinions can do more harm than good if expressed hastily. Cultivating this way of thinking requires courage, but offers immense freedom. The freedom of not needing to have an answer for everything. The freedom of being able to change your opinion when new information emerges without feeling like a traitor to your own principles. The freedom of admitting ignorance without feeling diminished as a person. And maybe in the end, this is the greatest wisdom we can develop. Understanding that our ignorance is vast, that our knowledge is limited, and that this isn't a reason for shame. It's a reason for humility. Because it's exactly this humility that keeps us open to learning, curious about the world, willing to grow continuously. The greatest certainty an intelligent person can have is that there will always be something they don't know. And it's exactly this certainty that makes them infinitely wiser than those who believe they know all the answers. Because in the end, recognizing your own ignorance isn't the end of the intellectual journey. It's just the beginning of true wisdom. True wisdom listens, learns, and remains silent when noise dominates. If this content made you reflect on your own certainties and doubts, subscribe to the channel for more reflections that will challenge your way of thinking. And leave a like if you agree that sometimes the greatest wisdom is in admitting we do not know everything. See you in the next video.